There's a moment in life when the noise fades, when all the running, all the doubt, all the almost finally slow down and you realize love isn't about finding something perfect. It's about choosing something real. I've been lost. I've been afraid. I've stood at the edge wondering if I was strong enough to stay. But today, I'm not here to talk about fear. I'm here to talk about choice. Because after everything, the chaos, the silence, the waiting, I finally choose you. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because it's honest. And sometimes that's the bravest thing we can do. I didn't arrive at this choice quickly. It wasn't a lightning strike or a sudden certainty that erased all doubt. It was slow. It was heavy. It came with nights where I stared at the ceiling, asking myself hard questions, the kind you can't escape by staying busy. I've learned that love doesn't usually announce itself with confidence. Sometimes it shows up quietly, carrying the weight of everything you've been through, asking if you're finally ready to stop running. For a long time, I thought love was supposed to feel effortless, like if it was right, it wouldn't ask so much of me. But life taught me otherwise. Life taught me that the things that matter most demand something real in return. They ask for patience. They ask for honesty. They ask you to stand still when every instinct tells you to walk away. I've walked away before, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of caring too much. Afraid of being seen fully, afraid of failing at something that mattered. It's easier to leave early than to stay and risk breaking. It's easier to pretend you don't need anyone than to admit that you do. I mastered that skill for a while. I called it independence. I called it strength. But deep down, it was just fear wearing a convincing mask. You came into my life without force. You didn't demand space. You didn't try to change me. You were just there, consistent, honest, human, and somehow that was more unsettling than chaos because chaos I understood. Chaos felt familiar. Calm felt dangerous. Calm meant there was something to lose. I noticed the way you listened, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but actually hearing what I was trying to say, even when I didn't say it well. I noticed the pauses you respected, the silences you didn't rush to fill. I noticed how you stayed the same on good days and bad days. That kind of steadiness is rare. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It just exists, quietly proving itself over time. Choosing you meant confronting parts of myself I'd been avoiding. The part that doubts. The part that assumes endings before beginnings have a chance. The part that prepares for loss instead of allowing joy. Loving you asked me to stop rehearsing for goodbye. It asks me to be present, fully present. That's harder than it sounds. Presence requires courage. It requires letting go of the illusion of control. I used to believe that choosing someone meant losing yourself. That commitment was a kind of surrender where your world got smaller. But what I've learned is that the right choice doesn't shrink you. It sharpens you. It reflects you back to yourself, not as who you pretend to be, but as who you actually are. Flaws included, doubts included, history included. There were moments I almost didn't choose you, moments where my past spoke louder than my present, moments where old wounds tried to convince me that history would repeat itself. Trauma has a way of pretending its wisdom. It tells you to protect yourself at all costs, even if the cost is connection. I listened to that voice for a long time. It kept me safe, but it also kept me alone. With you, I started questioning that voice, not silencing it, but challenging it, asking whether protection was still necessary or if it had overstayed its welcome. Love doesn't mean ignoring fear. It means deciding that fear doesn't get the final say. It means acknowledging the risk and stepping forward anyway. I finally choose you because you don't promise perfection. You don't pretend to have all the answers. You don't offer an escape from pain. What you offer is something far more rare. You offer truth. You offer effort. You offer the willingness to stay in the room when conversations get uncomfortable. You offer accountability, not excuses. I choose you because when things are quiet, it feels honest. There's no performance, no pressure to impress, just two people showing up as they are. I choose you because you don't complete me. You stand beside me. There's a difference. Completion suggests something missing. Partnership suggests something shared. I've learned that love isn't measured by intensity alone. Intensity fades. It always does. Love is measured by consistency, by how you treat each other on ordinary days, by how you handle disappointment, by whether respect remains on days when patience feels impossible. It requires remembering why you chose each other when emotions try to rewrite the story. I've seen love fail when people confuse intensity for depth, when they chase sparks and abandon foundations. I don't want that. I don't want something that burns fast and disappears. I want something that lasts quietly, something that survives boredom, stress, distance, and time. With you, that feels possible, not guaranteed, but possible. And possibility is enough to choose. I choose you because you don't run from my past and you don't try to erase it. You understand that who I am now was shaped by what came before. You don't weaponize my history. You don't use it against me. You respect it. You learn it. You allow it to exist without letting it define everything. There's a certain peace that comes from being chosen back without conditions, not loved for potential, not tolerated despite flaws, chosen fully. That kind of love doesn't need constant reassurance. It shows itself in actions, in presence, in reliability. You show up again and again, even when it's inconvenient. I finally choose you because you make the world feel quieter, not louder. Life is already loud enough. Expectations, failures, pressure, noise from every direction. With you, there's space to breathe, space to think, space to just be. That matters more than grand gestures or dramatic declarations. This choice doesn't come with blind optimism. I know there will be hard days. I know we'll disappoint each other. I know there will be moments of doubt, moments of distance, moments where choosing again feels heavy. But love was never meant to be weightless. It was meant to be worth the wait. I choose you with awareness, with intention, with open eyes. Not because I believe love will save me, but because I believe love is something you build piece by piece through choices that don't always feel heroic. Sometimes love looks like staying. Sometimes it looks like following where it leads, only knowing that this is the direction I'm willing to walk with you, without rushing to the end, without needing the final word, without closing the door on what's still unfolding, what's still growing, what's still being chosen in the quiet, unspoken way that matters most. I stayed when leaving would have been easier, not because I didn't feel the pull of escape, but because I finally understood what running had cost me. Leaving is seductive. It promises relief. It tells you that distance will heal what effort cannot. I believed that for a long time. Every time something mattered too much, I convinced myself that walking away was strength. I told myself I was protecting my peace. What I was really protecting was my fear. Staying is quieter than leaving. It doesn't come with dramatic exits or clean lines. It comes with unfinished conversations and uncomfortable pauses. It comes with choosing to sit in the tension instead of escaping it. When I first realized that staying was an option, it felt heavier than any goodbye I had ever made. Staying meant I couldn't hide behind momentum. I had to face what was in front of me, including myself. There were days when staying felt like standing still in the middle of a storm. Nothing felt resolved, nothing felt easy. Every instinct I had was telling me that distance would make things clearer. But clarity doesn't always come from space. Sometimes it comes from endurance. Sometimes it comes from refusing to abandon something just because it demands patience. I stayed when conversations got difficult, when words didn't land the way they were meant to, when misunderstandings lingered longer than comfort allowed. It would have been easier to interpret those moments as signs to leave. I've done that before. I've taken discomfort as proof that something was wrong instead of evidence that something was real and worth working through. Staying asked me to unlearn habits that once kept me safe, the habit of shutting down, the habit of pulling away the moment vulnerability appeared, the habit of assuming the worst before giving someone the chance to show up. Those habits were built over time, reinforced by disappointment, loss, and the belief that attachment was dangerous. There were moments when staying felt unfair, when I questioned why effort had to feel this heavy, why love couldn't just flow without resistance. I had to confront the idea that ease isn't the measure of value. Some things are difficult not because they're wrong, but because they matter enough to challenge you. Staying meant accepting that growth rarely feels comfortable in the moment. I stayed when I was tempted to rewrite the story in my head, to turn flaws into deal breakers, to magnify small moments into reasons to leave. The mind is skilled at building exits when the heart feels exposed. I had to learn to pause before believing every narrative fear presented. Not every doubt is a warning. Some are just echoes of old wounds asking for reassurance. Staying meant choosing communication over assumption, asking instead of withdrawing, explaining instead of expecting understanding without effort. That kind of honesty is exhausting when you're not used to it. It requires humility. It requires admitting when you're confused, when you're hurt, when you don't have the right words yet. Leaving avoids that work. Staying demands it. I stayed even when certainty didn't arrive, even when the future felt undefined. I had spent years chasing guarantees, believing that commitment required clarity before action. But life doesn't work that way. Most meaningful decisions are made in uncertainty. Staying taught me that faith isn't blind optimism. It's the willingness to invest without proof, to show up without knowing the outcome. There were days when staying felt lonely, not because I was alone, but because growth can feel isolating. When you stop reacting the way you used to, when you stop choosing the familiar escape, there's a quiet discomfort that comes with change. I had to sit with that. I had to trust that discomfort was temporary and that what I was building mattered more than the ease I was sacrificing. Staying didn't mean tolerating harm or ignoring boundaries. It meant recognizing the difference between discomfort and damage. That distinction matters. Not every hard moment is a reason to leave. Not every challenge is a sign of failure. Staying required discernment. It required me to stay alert, not passive. To remain engaged, not resigned. I stayed because I saw effort mirrored back to me. Because staying alone isn't strength. Mutual staying is. There's a difference between endurance and stagnation. What kept me grounded was knowing that I wasn't the only one choosing to remain, to try, to adjust, to learn. Love becomes heavy when only one person carries it. This wasn't that. Staying meant forgiving in real time, not just in theory. Forgiveness sounds noble until you're asked to practice it repeatedly, until you're asked to release resentment before it hardens into distance. I learned that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to weaponize pain. It's choosing connection over scorekeeping. Leaving would have spared me that work. Staying taught me how to do it. I stayed when my pride wanted to speak louder than my care, when being right felt more tempting than being close. Those moments reveal what you value most. Staying meant swallowing ego. It meant prioritizing understanding over victory. That kind of choice reshapes you. It forces you to examine why winning ever felt more important than belonging. There were times when staying meant waiting for growth, waiting for timing to align, waiting for wounds to heal. Waiting is uncomfortable in a culture that celebrates immediacy, but some things can't be rushed without breaking them. Staying taught me patience that isn't passive, patience that's active and attentive, patience that continues to show up even when progress feels slow. I stayed when the version of myself that loved escape tried to convince me that freedom meant detachment. I had to redefine freedom. I had to understand that real freedom isn't the absence of commitment. It's the ability to choose commitment without feeling trapped. Staying became a choice I made freely, not an obligation I resented. Staying asks me to trust someone else's process as much as my own, to accept that growth doesn't happen on a synchronized schedule, to allow room for mistakes without assuming they were permanent. That trust was difficult. It required me to relinquish control, to stop managing outcomes, to let things unfold without constant interference. I stayed because leaving had become too easy, because walking away no longer felt brave. Courage shifted shape for me. It stopped looking like independence and started looking like presence, like consistency, like choosing the same direction even when the path wasn't smooth. Staying became an act of resistance against fear. I stayed when love stopped feeling dramatic and started feeling deliberate, when the highs softened and the depth revealed itself. There's a quiet phase in love that doesn't get celebrated enough. It's where reality replaces fantasy, where effort replaces adrenaline. Many people leave there, mistaking calm for loss. I stayed long enough to understand that calm was where trust lived. Staying required me to believe that something could grow without constant proof of excitement. That stability wasn't stagnation. That depth didn't need noise. I had to unlearn the idea that love should always feel intense to be alive. Staying taught me to appreciate subtlety, to notice the strength in small, consistent acts of care. I stayed when the temptation to start over whispered promises of ease. Starting over is alluring because it resets expectations, but it also resets intimacy. It resets understanding. Staying meant valuing what had already been built. It meant honoring shared history instead of discarding it at the first sign of challenge. Staying didn't erase doubt. It taught me how to coexist with it without letting it steer. Doubt doesn't disappear just because you commit. It quiets when you stop feeding it. Staying shifted my attention from hypothetical endings to present effort, from imagined failures to real actions. I stayed because leaving would have meant betraying a version of myself that was finally learning how to remain open. Leaving would have reinforced the belief that connection is temporary, that people are replaceable, that depth is optional. Staying challenged those beliefs at their core. I stayed because something inside me recognized that this was where growth was happening, not in comfort, not in escape, but in the stretch. In the moments that asked more of me than I thought I could give. Growth doesn't announce itself as growth. It feels like strain. It feels like effort. It feels like choosing to stay present when absence would be simpler. I stayed not because I was afraid to leave, but because I was no longer afraid to stay. That shift mattered. Fear had dictated my choices for too long. Staying was the first decision that felt grounded instead of reactive. It felt intentional. It felt aligned with the person I was becoming, not the person I had been protecting. Staying is not a single decision. It's a series of small choices made daily. Choosing to listen again, choosing to explain again, choosing to forgive again, choosing to hope again. Each choice seems insignificant on its own, but together they form a commitment that's stronger than any dramatic declaration. I stayed even when staying didn't come with certainty or guarantees, even when the outcome remained undefined. I learned that meaning isn't found in assurance, it's found in participation, in showing up fully to something real instead of chasing something ideal. Staying meant allowing myself to be changed by love, not consumed by it, not erased by it, but shaped by it. It meant letting connection leave its mark. That vulnerability is terrifying when you've spent years avoiding impact, but it's also the only way anything lasting is built. I stayed because this time leaving would have been the familiar choice and staying was the unknown. And for once, I was willing to step into the unknown without planning an exit, without rehearsing the ending, without preparing to disappear, choosing instead to remain here in this moment, in this effort, in this decision that continues unfolding, without a final conclusion, without closure, without certainty. Just the ongoing act of staying, of remaining present, of choosing connection over comfort again and again, without resolving it neatly, without sealing it with an ending, but allowing it to keep moving forward, unfinished, alive, still asking me to stay.